Hello everyone, it's your host, your friend, your boy, Jet Black One and Only, here doing a video on Storm versus Red Tornado. Now this was already done by my boy DanCo. I'm a subscriber to his channel and he did a video that essentially was his take on who would win in a fight, Storm versus Red Tornado. I watched the video and I listened to his points. I don't really know very much about Storm. So real quick, I'm going to give you a summary of what Storm is capable of based on what I learned from DanCo's video, and then from there I will present DanCo's argument for why he believes Storm would win, and then I will present a counter argument for why I believe Red Tornado would be able to defeat Storm. So Storm's powers. Storm can manipulate the energy of the following forces and elements of Earth to alter the weather: magnetic, electromagnetic, air, moisture, temperature, pressure, electrical energy, ocean currents, and other atmospheric forces. Her abilities can alter when in other environments. For example, in space she can manipulate the energies of stars and solar winds. She has the ability of power channeling. She can channel the forces under her control through her own body, allowing her to fire electricity, fly, as well as other abilities. She has super senses. Her ability to detect changes in the atmosphere grants her incredibly heightened senses due to being able to sense even minute changes in atmospheric pressure. When it comes to the power scale for Storm, Storm can go as large as being able to create planetary storms that engulf the entire Earth, and she can go as small as to manipulate energy directly within a machine, like a robot body, or within a person, like the electrical impulses in your brain. So she has a very wide scale there, and if we then refer to Storm when she's in space, that scale can become even larger, considering the fact that she can manipulate the energy of stars and solar storms in that way. The main weakness I heard him go over in his video was that Storm manipulates her abilities using her emotions. So in order for her to control her powers, she has to keep her emotions in check, and that's very key for her being able to use her powers. Now that I've finished this section on Storm, let me move forward to DanCo's argument for why Storm would win in a fight against Red Tornado. So now that we've gone over Storm's strengths and weaknesses, let's go over DanCo's argument for why Storm would beat Red Tornado in a fight. So Dan's argument goes as follows. Red Tornado has more control over the wind than Storm. Storm is more versatile than Red Tornado. Storm can counter Red Tornado's wind power temporarily, and is durable enough to take hits from Red Tornado's wind abilities. Storm can defeat Red Tornado simply by hitting him with a powerful enough lightning strike, or use her abilities to manipulate his internal electrical impulses and defeat him. Storm is faster than Red Tornado, so she can blitz Red Tornado using her abilities, whether she uses a lightning strike in order to hit Red Tornado quickly before Red Tornado can react, or some other method of blitzing like manipulating his electrical impulses before he's able to act, and be able to essentially incapacitate Red Tornado before he can truly make a move. So Dan's argument, more or less, is just that Storm has more abilities than Red Tornado, and that Storm's abilities will allow her to be able to defeat Red Tornado before he can use any of his abilities in order to defeat her. He also makes the argument that Red Tornado, with his onslaught of wind abilities against Storm, because Storm can also manipulate the elements, even though he admits that Red Tornado has more control over the wind than Storm, considering that Red Tornado is an air elemental, that Storm has enough control over the wind to still be able to counter his attacks, at least for a long enough time for her to then blitz Red Tornado. Now, that concludes the section discussing Dan's argument. In the next section, I will discuss why I disagree with Dan's argument, hopefully going point by point. In this section, I will be doing a counter-argument to Dan's argument, discussing the individual points of Dan's argument and why I feel Red Tornado can defeat Storm. Now keep in mind, this is like the little grain of salt I'm going to put in here, like the take my words carefully kind of thing. So I'm going to allow Red Tornado to use Ulthoon feats, which I know is, I guess, taboo, considering the fact that ever since Ulthoon became Red Tornado, Ulthoon being the air elemental that's inside of Red Tornado's android body, he hasn't used his illusion-based abilities. But based on the 1985 Red Tornado series, it's definitely the same Ulthoon that we saw in the Justice League of America comics, and we're aware that Ulthoon has these illusion abilities, and there's nothing in the comics to say that he has lost access to these abilities. So, because there's no reason to assume that Ulthoon can no longer use his illusion abilities, then there's no reason to assume that he can't use them against Storm. You can also argue that in many situations, Red Tornado hasn't had to use his illusion-based abilities. So that is like a solid counter to the idea that like he just doesn't have them in the first place. There are also many forms of media in which characters have different powers that they don't use all of the time or they use rarely, but there have been periods of time in which they've used them more. So without further ado, I'll discuss my counter to Dan's argument. The first point in Dan's argument was that Red Tornado has more control over the wind than Storm. I don't know enough about Storm, so I can't really agree or disagree on that point. So I will just give that to him. The idea that Red Tornado has more control over the wind than Storm. I get where he's coming from. The idea that Red Tornado is an air elemental. It almost goes without saying that, hey, like, if all I am is wind, then I should be better at manipulating wind. So, the next point in Dan's argument is Storm is more versatile than Red Tornado. Now, when just looking at the base Red Tornado android and the fact that he can manipulate wind because he has like an air elemental inside of him, Red Tornado does seem a little bit more limited compared to someone who can manipulate the forces of Earth itself. But when we incorporate the feats that the air elemental inside of Red Tornado is capable of, the argument stands that Ulthoon has significantly more versatility than Storm. While Storm is able to manipulate and control the forces of Earth, Ulthoon has feats like creating his own planet Earth, an entire replica of Earth and everyone on it. It's a solid illusion that you can touch and interact with people who like talk and communicate and have feelings and can die. His illusions are so exact to the point where if you were on his illusion Earth versus the actual Earth, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference because he replicates every detail. Being able to essentially create replicas of entire planets and even of people, as he has the multi-life ability where he can split himself up into multiple living beings, and also replicate the abilities of each being. He also can just replicate the abilities of a being without having to use multi-life, so he just creates a tactile illusion of said being that has all of their abilities, and weaknesses, mind you. So it's not entirely overpowered, but still incredibly powerful. Ulthoon having this onslaught of abilities compared to Storm's manipulation makes Storm's manipulation seem far less versatile, considering the fact that Ulthoon can essentially make almost anything he can imagine real. He can just straight up create tactile illusions that go so far as to practically just being real. One thing that he's done is that he's been able to split himself up into multiple beings and become the Justice League of America, where he has recreated all of their powers and weaknesses, and he simultaneously is every member of the Justice League at once with all of their abilities. Minus one ability with Green Lantern, who is capable of creating anti-energy, which is something that goes beyond what Ulthoon is capable of. If Ulthoon was to create anti-energy, he would die. So that's one thing that he can't do. Now, I would argue that having the versatility of the entire Justice League of America behind you makes for way more versatility than just being able to control the forces of the Earth, considering having all of the abilities of the Justice League of America with you. The next point of Dan's argument was Storm can counter Red Tornado's wind power temporarily and is durable enough to take hits from Red Tornado's winds. I'll give Dan that argument. Essentially, the idea is, even though Red Tornado has more control over the wind than Storm, Storm still has a fair amount of control over the wind. He's not saying that Storm completely no-diffs Red Tornado, meaning that Red Tornado's attacks make no difference to Storm, but rather he's arguing that Red Tornado's attacks, while powerful, can be countered. They're not infallible. And Storm might take damage from Red Tornado's attacks, but they may not be enough to knock Storm out of the fight. So, if the argument was that Storm is using, if Red Tornado is strictly using his wind abilities, then yes, I feel that Storm can very easily handle Red Tornado's wind abilities, and she may take some damage, but it wouldn't be enough to take her out of the fight. So I agree with Dan's point in that argument. The next point of Dan's argument is Storm can defeat Red Tornado simply by hitting him with a powerful lightning strike or use her abilities to manipulate his internal electrical impulses and defeat him. I do disagree with this one in particular. My main reasoning for that is because Storm's abilities come directly from interacting with the forces of Earth. She's manipulating the energies of the forces of Earth in order to then interface with people or technology when she uses her powers on that scale to either manipulate your nervous system or to mess with the circuitry of the machine. But because she's using the forces of Earth, she's no different really from Construct. Construct was the main enemy of the 1985 Red Tornado series, and his ability was being able to manipulate the forces of Earth because he's literally the sentient manifestation of the electrical forces of Earth. He could control every living thing on the planet and every machine except Red Tornado. Red Tornado is immune to manipulation via direct manipulation of the forces of Earth due to his immunity to Construct. And considering that Storm would essentially be trying to do the same thing that Construct would be trying to do in that way, Storm's abilities would not work on Red Tornado. When it comes to directly using her abilities to manipulate the electrical impulses inside of his body in order to possibly reprogram him or cause him to short circuit or something like that, Red Tornado can just no-diff that. That's what he does against the Construct. So, when it comes to just speed blitzing him with a lightning strike, like a powerful enough lightning strike to knock Red Tornado out of commission, there are a few things that you have to understand. For one, the Ulthoon ability to be able to just split yourself into the Justice League of America is a pretty powerful ability. Not only are there many Justice League of America characters who are just straight up immune to lightning. For example, if you were to hit Superman with a lightning bolt, he could definitely no-diff a lightning bolt. Martian Manhunter is intangible. He can just phase through a lightning bolt. And also, Ulthoon has speed feats involving him using his ultra powers to move billions of light years through space with the greatest of ease. So with Ulthoon's speed feats, I imagine that he would be faster than a lightning bolt. So the idea that lightning could speed blitz him, I highly disagree with. He can become the Flash if he wants to, and essentially just use the Speed Force to just dodge the lightning. So I feel like there are many arguments against the idea that A, Storm is faster than Red Tornado, and B, that she can blitz Red Tornado before he has a chance to make a move. If anything, a counter argument can be made that because of Ulthoon's ultra powers and his ability to move at such incredible speeds, that he would have the ability to actually blitz Storm before Storm would have the ability to make a move. So in short, my counter to Dan's argument is that Storm is not more versatile than Red Tornado if you acknowledge that Red Tornado has the abilities of Ulthoon. That Red Tornado does have more control over the wind than Storm, but that's me more or less just saying what Dan said there, so no disagreement there. I did agree with Dan that Storm can counter Red Tornado's wind-based powers specifically, due to her being able to control the winds. I disagreed with the idea that Storm would be able to blitz Red Tornado or to manipulate the internal electrical impulses within him. due to the fact that he's immune to that kind of thing, as we've seen with him facing off against Construct, as well as the fact that with his ultra powers and having flown multiple times through space, billions of light years through space, and almost no time flat, essentially sets up the idea that Ulthoon is significantly faster than Storm, and can speed with Storm. Even if you don't want to use the feat of him moving billions of light years through space, which again he has done multiple times, you can always say that he can just use the powers of the Flash, as he has done, and by using the powers of the Flash be faster than Storm. Or use the powers of Superman, and use the powers of Superman to then be faster than Storm. Or use the powers of Martian Manhunter, and through intangibility, Storm doesn't have the ability to truly affect him, and then defeat her through that way. There also is the idea that Storm has to control her emotions in order to use her powers. That's one of her main weaknesses that I noticed. So in order to exploit this weakness, he could use the telepathic abilities of Martian Manhunter in order to cloud her emotions, or essentially make her catatonic if you really wanted to. He also could manipulate the energies of the lanterns with the emotional spectrum in order to try and affect her emotions in that way, and possibly throw her powers off balance for him to have a chance in order to attack her. Also, his most powerful move, Ulthoon. If we go back to just Storm versus Red Tornado, and we have them both do their strongest thing. If Storm created a planetary storm that engulfed the entire planet, and her goal was to take out the Earth and Ulthoon with it, not only is Ulthoon capable of just going into space and just making another Earth, because Ulthoon doesn't need Earth to survive in the first place, but Ulthoon can generate the Justice League of America using his multi-life ability. And then he has demonstrated that if he uses all their powers precisely, he can knock Storm into the antimatter universe, where she will be instantly destroyed due to the fact that she's made of matter in a space that's made entirely of antimatter. So even if we go all out with both characters, I still believe that Red Tornado, due to his Ulthoon-based abilities, would be able to defeat Storm. But what do you all think? I would love to hear your thoughts. Make sure that you hit me up in the comment section below. I would love to hear your debate, and thank you for watching. If you like this video, make sure to like this video, favorite, comment, subscribe, and ding ding ding, ring that bell so you be notified whenever we do these live streams, and have a wonderful day. This is your host, your friend, your boy, Jet Black, the one and only, logging out. Peace.